Hello everyone. Today I'll be talking something about autism. Last 1 or 2 decades, we have seen the symptoms or rather the cases of autism going on a rise. The point is our awareness is also on rise in the same manner? Well, that is what we need to address. We need to be much more aware about autism. Before becoming aware, we need to know what is autism. So autism is basically a neurodevelopmental disorder which is characterized by problems or deficits that a child faces in two important domains. The first domain is the ability to communicate socially and interact socially. And the other domain is where the child will have repetitive behaviors, repetitive and restricted activities as well as interests. So let us see what is the first domain. The first domain, which I mentioned, that the child will have challenges in terms of social interaction and social communication, is where the child will have problems in understanding language. He will have problems in communicating by using language. He will also have issues when it comes to understanding various social contexts. Then engaging in back and forth communication or to and fro communication is what the child may not be able to do well. Then he will also have problems when it comes to identifying emotions in others and responding to them accordingly. Similarly, identifying emotions within him and expressing them freely or properly. There will be difficulty when it comes to understanding non-verbal communication patterns, for example, gestures or understanding the tone of the language that is being spoken. Similarly, he will have challenges when it comes to using non-verbal behaviors or non-verbal communication patterns when it comes to talking or interacting. This also leads to problems where a child will not be able to understand the meaning of various relationships, form various relationships, maintain various relationships, and develop any relationship. And this will lead the child to become socially isolated or socially withdrawn. This is the domain where the challenges are related to social communication and interaction. The second domain is where you will see child having very restricted or repetitive behaviors, interests, and activities that he would like to engage in. This will include repetitive behaviors or movements in terms of similar use of object every time he gets one. He won't be able to play with toys in various creative and explorative ways. For example, a child who is given a car, he would always be interested in just spinning the wheels of the car rather than exploring the car, the doors, the windows, how the car might move. That is not what the child would engage in. Similarly, he might just be repeating the words or sentences. He might just land up lining toys, and that is a very fixed play pattern that you will see. Role play is not something that the child will be able to understand and engage in. Then insistence on sameness. Okay, it is not just about repetition of activities, but also fixation on activities and objects. So the insistence on sameness is very much seen where the child won't be able to adapt to changes in situations, change in people around him. He will find it difficult when it comes to process various sensory inputs. These children have problems in terms of either their sensory systems are hyperactive or their sensory systems are hypoactive. That's why you will see that these children are not able to tolerate certain types of sounds or loud sounds. Not just sounds, they won't be even able to tolerate certain textures of foods, textures of clothing. They will not be able to bear certain temperature changes. That indicates that their sensory systems are hyper functioning much more intensely. And some children might even show hypersensitivity. So you will see that some of these children, suppose they're playing downstairs and they have a fall and they might get hurt and bleed, yet they might not even cry or they might not even wince out of pain. Why? Because they are hyposensitive. Their sensitivity is much more reduced when it comes to their sensory systems. So these are the huge range of symptoms that you see in both the domains. Apart from that, an important thing about autism is that these children not necessarily will have problems in intellectual development as it is considered by a majority of us. An autistic child may be with problems in intellectual functioning or may absolutely not have problems when it comes to intellectual functioning. So these children can land up anywhere when it comes to their IQ levels. Some may have a low IQ, but then some of them you can see on having an IQ which is on the genius side. Okay. Some of these children may also have some other neurodevelopmental issues. For example, ADHD, a commonly known neurodevelopmental issue, the attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Some of them may also have more commonly physical or metabolic problems, such as say epilepsy or diabetes or other genetic issues, but not all children. So you can see there is a huge range of symptoms and huge range of various disorders that these children can get associated with. And that's why we don't just call this entire thing as autism. Today we call it as autism spectrum disorder. So when I say spectrum, it itself means that there is a huge variety, there is a huge range. Every child who gets a diagnosis of autism is going to be way different than the other child. Okay, these children can be anywhere. Some of them might have just problems when it comes to social interaction, but significant problems when it comes to sensitivity issues. Some of them may show not much of sensitivity issues, but more of problems in social sphere. Some of them might have problems or deficits at equal level. So there is a huge permutation and combination that you can see with these typical symptoms of autism. That's why, depending on how intense these symptoms are, what kind of symptoms these children have, that will determine how much is the severity of their condition and how much is the help and the support that they are going to require throughout. So this particular aspect gives us an idea that autism could be mild, moderate, or severe. We also call it as level 1, level 2, or level 3 being severe, where the symptoms are much more significant, they are much more debilitating, and the children might need substantial help and support. But you also have milder cases, right? And mild to moderate cases are the ones which are usually not even visible. These children otherwise might look very much normal. It's only when you start interacting with them or talking with them, you will realize that there is some issue. So again, that's why the use of the term spectrum for this particular condition becomes very, very rational and justifiable, right? The point is that previously you had autism divided into certain categories, like say Asperger's disease or Asperger's syndrome rather, childhood disintegrative disorder, Rett's disease. These are also some terms that you may have heard or you might hear when it comes to autism. But this was the previous classification which was used around a decade ago. Okay, today, since there is huge variation that we find in every case of autism, all these names are being discarded, which I mentioned just now, and then we just have one single umbrella entity, what we call it as autism spectrum disorder. This is about knowing what is autism. But an obvious question that gets asked is that why these symptoms come? What are the causes of these symptoms? What is the cause of autism? Couple of decades ago, the answer would have been very, very difficult because autism was conceived to be some fancy disease of West. We never thought that it is something that we see in India. But no, as the awareness levels are increasing, as the research is increasing, now we know that autism is very, very much prevalent. It was always prevalent even in India. When it comes to causes, that is something a little tricky. No single cause has been mapped to the onset and origin of autism. But yes, what we know today is that autism is possibly caused by multiple causes. Different causes have been linked to the possibility of a child getting autism. Now, these causes include anything starting from inherited tendencies, the genetic predisposition, what we call it as, chromosomal abnormalities. Then you have infections in the mother during pregnancy. Then you also have causes which are linked to autism that include low birth weight, problems during the delivery of the child, major illnesses in the child when the child is in his infanthood, exposure to various toxins or heavy metals if that has occurred by default, exposures to pesticides. These are all huge range of causes which are mapped to autism. But again, as I mentioned, we cannot pinpoint on just one cause for every case. Many times it has happened in practice that you take the case and you just still don't know that what was possibly a situation or a cause that might have led this child into autism. Many times even that happens. So the important point about knowing autism is that rather than focusing just on the causes and why it has happened, we need to work on how we are going to deal with this condition. Because the rest of the things are beyond our control. We need to do a lot of research on that yet. But what we can definitely do is know the symptoms, identify it correctly, and rather than pondering and getting depressed about asking why, the best scenario is that we keep that aside and start working on what we can do from this day onwards.